It is August 27th, or 22nd, 2024, 3:30 p.m. I'm going to call the Diversion Board of Authority board meeting to order. And with that, could I get a roll call, please, Don?
Mayor Carlson.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mayor Mahoney.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Ebbinger.
Here.
Ms. Kolpak. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mrs. Sherling.
I'm here.
Mr. Grimberg.
Here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Selgerwald.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of minutes from the July 25th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. For a motion to approve the order of the agenda,
Move to approve. Or second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries as well. Moving on to the consent agenda. There's a number of items that are listed for approval. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote on this, please.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Ebbinger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Selgerwald.
Aye.
That is everyone.
All right. Thank you very much. And I actually forgot to recognize Mr. Steen. Welcome back, but in a different capacity. And just want to thank Roger Olson for his years of service to the Board of Authority as well. So we'll enjoy having you. It'll be weird to have you on that side versus this side. So moving on to co-executive director update, and I will turn this over to Mr. Robert Wilson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good afternoon. For your consideration this afternoon would be approval of FMDA Executive Director applicant screening and interview process schedule. This is briefed out in the memo that was provided to you in the briefing packet and is available on the screen at this point. Working with Chair Carlson and Vice Chair Grinberg, we've been working on a schedule that would allow for the board to potentially appoint a new executive director pending applicants that you receive and review at the meeting at the October board meeting held on October 24th. There's obviously a number of stages in that process that include the position closing on September 6th. Following September 6th, on September 9th, myself and Mr. Redlinger in the co-executive director roles, along with Chair Carlson and Vice Chair Grinberg and Tracy Peters, HR director for Cass County, would review the applicants and identify preferred candidates to be interviewed by the planning committee. That those planning committee interviews would be closed session because they are pre-finalists, would not have finalists identified at that point. Tentatively, we are looking at those conversations occurring on October 4th, and the planning committee has been contacted to get calendar reservations on calendars, begin the planning process for that. Assuming at the end of that process that there are, the planning committee had 3 or more candidates that they wanted to identify as finalists, would need to go into public session and identify those finalists publicly. And then we moving forward from that, we propose having interviews with finalists on October 18th. Interviews would be in the afternoon. Still working on details, but would anticipate that the morning would be some combination of tours, stakeholder meetings, review of the meet and greets with the prospective candidates. And then, again, the board would need to follow those.
Robert, can you be closer to the mic, please?
My apologies. Okay. I hope you didn't miss half of that. But again, that would be on October 18th, and anticipate that following the interviews, the full board would most likely need some time to deliberate and then be prepared for an agenda item at the meeting on October 24th to potentially consider appointment of an executive director. All of this is, all of this is assumes candidate availability on these times, and that's a bit of a question at this point. But we wanted to try to get this schedule on calendars as early as possible, knowing that there's a target date for the board to consider appointing an next executive director, but that is subject to availability of candidates. And Madam Chair, I see there is at least one question.
Thank you, Robert. Commissioner Sherlin.
Thank you. So just for clarification, could you make sure that those calendar invites are sent out? I know one was sent out and then it was rescinded, and then there was a message that there was going to be more information to follow, and then I mentioned it to you, and
Yep.
and I'm still, I just want to make sure, because October will be here before you know it, and I just want to make sure that I've got it on my calendar. Thanks.
We'll make note of that and follow up.
Right. Were you done, or did you have more information to provide?
I'm done. I'm open for questions.
Okay. Any additional questions? If not, I would be looking for a motion to approve this agenda item.
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Again, one more call for any discussion. Seeing none, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Edminger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Stelzvold.
Aye.
That is everyone.
All right, thank you. And that motion carries. Moving on to the general counsel update, I will turn this over to Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Diversion Authority Board. Today, before you, you have a resolution authorizing the exchange of the temporary P3 improvement warrants. Just as a little bit of a refresher, you'll recall back in January, the board approved the first tranche of the temporary financing, which was the renewal of the temporary refunding improvement bonds with Cass County Joint Water Resource District. That was in the amount of approximately $180 million. The second tranche was the authority loan temporary warrants, which you'll recall was approved back in May. And then this is the final tranche. The reason that we need to do this is temporary improvement warrants secure, these particular temporary improvement warrants secure part of the developer's security interest in the project. Temporary warrants under North Dakota law have a maximum maturity date of 3 years. And it is hard to believe, but 3 years have passed since we reached commercial close on the P3 contract. As a result, the Cass County Joint Water Resource District is required to renew those warrants. They're in the same amounts, just for an additional 3 years. The Cass County Joint Water Resource District has already authorized this, but under the Joint Powers Agreement and the financing documents, consent by the Diversion Authority Board is needed. So happy to answer any questions. And yesterday, the Finance Committee approved this also.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Are there any questions?
Move for approval.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Again, any other discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Edminger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Stelzvold.
Aye.
That is everyone.
Thank you, and that motion carries. Moving on to construction project updates. These items are for our information only. First one is the U.S. Army Corps project update. I'll turn this over to Ms. Terry Williams.
Good afternoon, Chair Carlson and board members. Happy to present our monthly update, and you have a copy of this in your packet. For the diversion inlet structure in the wild rice, the gate machinery issue, it's going to take into 2025 to get the revised equipment on site and tested and installed and commissioned and training conducted. For the I-29 raise, I've been reporting for a long time. We're close to the end of that project. The North Dakota DOT has identified a couple of issues with the exit 50 overpass and one of the bridges over the Borrow Ditch, and our team is working to resolve those two issues. For the Red River structure that's covered under the drone footage, the big news is that Gate 1, the west gate has been hung, and Gate 2 is being delivered to the site for assembly on site. Drain 27, the wetland mitigation project, it was discovered in June that a producer had planted crops within the work limits of this contract, and it's caused some setbacks and costs and damage to the establishment of that wetland, and we are going to modify our contract to have those crops removed so that our contractor can get back to work and prevent further delays to that project. For Drayton Dam mitigation, we have set the celebration for Wednesday, September 25th, and we're targeting 1 o'clock up at Drayton Dam, and we'll get some invites out to you all shortly. So hopefully y'all can make it up there. It's quite a project. The DNR is very interested in being a partner in messaging and hosting that great celebration. For the Southern Embankment Reach SE2A, our contractor is showing back up on site, and I'm happy to report that they have been doing weed control and erosion control. So we're looking up on that one. On number 8, these were our most recently awarded contracts. You can see the progress there. Making great progress on OHB 1B and 2B. SE4, they're getting off to a bit of a slow start and getting their personnel identified and up and running. And then for the forest mitigation contract, the protest was denied. Our contractor's getting back to work, and they will resume responsibility for weed control on all those sites on 3 September. Number 9, we are still on track to award our final 2 contracts for the Southern Embankment in January. My last little bit of news is Colonel Swenson. His deployment ended to Maui, and he will be attending this board meeting in September and visiting the site and meeting with Mayor Carlson and whoever else wants to meet with him. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Terry, and also thank you for taking over the weed control on some of those projects. I know that was a conversation that we were having, and so really appreciate that. Any questions from board members for Ms. Williams? All right.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Shirley.
So how do we have such a miscommunication with the planting, and is that going to be an issue with any other areas?
So I think this is an indicator of how important and how difficult it may be to prevent encroachments on the entire project. There's 22 miles of southern embankment that's going to have to be protected from encroachment from producers, landowners, whomever. So this, Jody can probably answer a lot of questions on this, but it clearly was an encroachment by this producer into the work limits.
And so is that cost borne by the producer then, or is it at our expense to remove this crop?
So we, the Corps of Engineers, it's our contract, so we are going to have to compensate our contractor for the damages and the setbacks this has caused to the contract. And we can't hold off any longer and let these crops sit there and get harvested. Our contractor has some work to do this fall. And so the Corps, we've decided it's absolutely worth paying our contractor to remove the corn.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Ms. Williams, and we're looking forward to seeing Colonel Swenson here. Moving on to 7B, I'll turn this over to the Authority Engineer, Chris Bockyguard.
Thanks, Chair Carlson, members of the Diversion Board. Real quick update today. Not a lot of new activities, just a lot of continuation of the activities that we've seen in the past. A couple of highlights to mention. We did get the County Road 32 bridge rail is complete, so we are making continued forward progress on getting the first bridge completed, which is great news. You'll see some of the bridge work in the drone video as well. And one note on I-94, they are working. You'll see them working now. They're finalizing the tweaking and making some preparations for winter on the 2 bypass lanes, so they will have those ready here. Likely we'll have one direction using all 4 lanes here shortly, and the other one will be closer to the fall. So those are the main updates. Not a lot new on the upcoming work. Again, just 2 channel reaches left to get started in, and those are imminent in the next month or 2. Again, as Terry mentioned, the SE4 contract will be anticipating a start of construction yet this fall on that. So with that, that's the main update for this month, short of the drone footage, but I would stand for any questions that you guys might have as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bockyguard. Are there any questions? See none. If you want to move down to the project safety update.
Yeah, real brief update this month as well. 2 minor recordable events, minor injuries, just minor treatment and back to work. So nothing of significance on the safety agenda again this month. But again, would stand for any questions that you guys might have related to the safety report.
Thank you. Any questions? There are none. You can move on to the drone footage.
Hi, I'm Tom Fuchs, Senior Construction Manager with the Metro Flood Diversion Authority. Work on the FM Area Diversion Project has been progressing at numerous locations around the Fargo-Moorhead metro area. Here are some of the highlights for this month. The largest of 3 control structures, the Red River structure, is taking shape. With the first gates now hung, delivery of components for the second of 3 50 by 52.5 foot radial arm gates is now underway. Once completed, the gates will remain open until the project needs to operate, at which time they will close to hold back floodwaters from entering the FM Metro. In addition to the gates, Ames Construction has completed placing preload embankments on the east and west sides of the structure. They've also begun driving sheet piles and H-piles for the east side flood wall and are building concrete gauge well structures that will house instrumentation for measuring the water surface levels both up and downstream of the structure when it operates. Nearby at the southern embankment, earthwork continues at Reach SC2B. R.J. Zavarol and Sons, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers contractor, is also now installing the first precast concrete box culvert segments where the borrow ditch will cross County Road 16. More than 2 million cubic yards of material will be excavated to construct the project. As we move west, we can see excavation taking place at Reach 13 of the Stormwater Diversion Channel. ASN Constructors has surpassed the halfway mark for moving the required 45 million cubic yards of material. That means they've excavated enough earth to construct 7 full-size replicas of the Great Pyramid of Giza. "19 road and railroad bridges will cross the 30-mile-long channel, and they are all under construction this summer. Near the channel's downstream end, ASN constructors poured the bridge deck at the County Road 4 and 31 combined crossing this month. Just north of the metro area, at the I-29 crossing, progress has been made on the bridge abutments and piers, and girders are now installed on one of the pair of interstate crossings. Our drone view of this area also shows the work happening on the nearby crossings at County Road 81, as well as the BNSF Hillsborough Railroad. Excavation is underway at both future bridges, and crews are constructing embankments raising the mainline grades on the approaches to them. At the BNSF Prosper Crossing, bridge piers have been built, and the work shifted in recent weeks to building the bridge abutments for the new rail line. In addition to the 19 road and railroad bridges, ASN Constructors is building 9 maintenance road bridges. The first, at the Lower Rush River Inlet site, now has the substructure elements completed and the bridge girders installed. When completed, the new river inlet will feature an open channel excavation lined with riprap passing underneath the maintenance road bridge. Those are just some of the many FM area diversion components under construction. To see more progress, follow the MFDA on social media.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to the communication.
me.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Shirley.
I just have a question for Mr. Bachegard. You recall last year there was a failure on South University and 52nd of the flood wall, and we had quite a discussion about whose responsibility it was to repair. And I just noticed that that repair just seems to keep going on, and they're driving pilings like mad. And just wondering, are we on budget with that, or what's going on?
Commissioner Sherling, members of the board. Yes, we're that project is on track. That was the extent of the work that the city requested that we take on, was to do a very extensive structural repair. So that piling is there to help anchor the base of the current wall so that it will stop moving in the future. So yep, the work they're doing now is the work we anticipated. So I've not heard anything from Nathan on any major change orders. So
Okay,
yep.
great, thanks.
You bet.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Moving on to the communications team update, and I will turn this over to Amy.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. We had an opportunity to feature bridges last month, or earlier this month actually, in our newsletter, since all 19 are under construction right now. And that did garner quite a bit of interest, with about 1 in 5 clicking in to learn more about what was going on, including the bridge superintendent who we did the Faces video on. We also helped facilitate some tours and speaking engagements in the community. This past month, Admiral Munch was here for Navy Week and very interested in seeing part of the project, so we were able to give him a brief tour. And then the North Dakota Water Resources Institute also put together quite a full day of speaking engagements and learning about the diversion, and then spent the next morning touring the project. And that went very well from what I understand. For media relations, we sent the July construction update. Just today, we shared the developer's release as well on a width restriction that's coming into play on I-94. And tomorrow we'll be sending actually the August construction update release, but this one will be a joint release since we'll be able to celebrate passing the 50% milestone on the channel excavation. So we'll be sending that out together. And that's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see we had a 17.4% clicks, and then below it says 2024 industry average is 2%. Who are they? What kind of industries are those? I've always wondered about that.
I'm taking a more of a broad approach. There's not, unfortunately, stats that are specific to our industry, so to speak. But they all tend to be within that anywhere 1 to 4% from what I've seen for industry averages, depending on, what, if we're talking B2C, B2B, that type of thing.
Okay. Just curious. So thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
Moving on to land management update, and I'll turn this over to our land manager, Joey Smith.
Yes, good afternoon. So on the maps before you, there hasn't been a significant change over last month. Again, everything that is in green means we have acquired the necessary property rights. Those that are outlined in orange means we have entered into eminent domain. Those that are in blue are still in negotiations. Just so you know, those that are remaining in blue, eminent domain has been authorized. There's a handful of them that'll be authorizing next week. So with the exception of those properties that are sitting down around the Wolverton area, Christine, and maybe the Cheyenne Benching project, if we haven't already acquired the property rights, we are starting the eminent domain process. On the next slide is just a general overview of where we're at in the acquisition process. Again, we're at 97% complete for the construction footprint. And then for the UMA, we're sitting just under 53%. For over the location, you can see on the far right-hand side, all of those that we have under 100% completed the acquisition process. For the southern embankment, we actually have acquired all the necessary property rights. However, in the state of Minnesota, we still have some just compensation hearings that we need to step through. So that's why you're not going to see that pie chart close up until we've gotten through those commissioner hearings. In the upstream mitigation area, it's similar to the chart before that, just under 53%. And then our environmental monitoring easements are just over 75%. If you go to the next slide, Peggy, I'll just do a key activities overview. We do continue to negotiate settlement agreements for those existing eminent domain actions. The Cass County Joint Water Resource District did approve a settlement with one property owner covering 2 parcels this morning. In the last month, we did successfully close on 3 parcels with 3 separate landowners in the UMA. And of course, we continue the process of disposing land through the excess lands policy. We currently have 28 parcels going through that, just over 313 acres. Some of those are currently just still moving through the policy. Some of those we've actually closed, or we have a pending sales. We've had somebody who's notified us that they want to purchase that property. Think of all the rail corridor that's sitting along Horace, where we're still working through some of those closing documents. And then just a reminder for the Minnesota properties, we have vacate dates for owners in occupied structures in Clay County. It'll be April 1st of 2025. And then the deadline in Wilkin County is going to be June 1st of 2025. And just to address Commissioner Shirley's question from earlier, you can probably expect a contract to be coming to you in the next probably 60 days regarding signage. And so as we continue to close up some of these projects or portions of the project and they're being turned over and we don't have anybody out there doing construction anymore, what we are seeing are there are some additional encroachment issues. And, empathy to the property owner who farmed it one way for 100 years. We step in, we've slightly modified that land. We need to come in and probably do a better job of communicating and putting up additional signage on that. We do have some areas where the Corps contractor will retain the temporary construction easement and maintain that property for the next 5 years. In some areas, they're going to hand that TC back over to us and to the property owner sooner than that. So it just has to do a lot with that communication and be able to get that messaging better out to those property owners and maybe provide some additional signage. So again, we'll be bringing something forward to you in the next couple months, asking for your approval so that when situations do occur, like Ms. Williams brought up earlier, we do have the resources at hand to go ahead and go start mitigating that. So any questions that I can answer?
Any questions for Ms. Smith? I guess we don't have any questions.
Thank
you
you
very much. All right, moving on to number 10, a finance update. I'll turn this over to Mayor Dargis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yesterday, the Finance Committee did meet. There were a number of issues we talked about. Mr. Shockley talked about the temporary P3 improvement warrants. That was acted on and approved. Also, there was a water pipeline of 2 miles for the Cass County or Cass Rural Water Users District for $709,916, as well as a cemetery agreement for Comstock Lutheran Church at $1.8 million. Our approval of bills, we had $4,472,881 presented this month, which were paid, obviously. The largest bill being to Cass County Joint Water Resource District. Our financial report, we have our net position is $806,544. Our revenues for the month were at $5 million, and year-to-date on sales tax, and year-to-date it's at $97 million. I would like to thank Mr. Barthol, Mr. Nicholson, and Mr. Shockley, and Commissioner Grinberg. We're doing some deeper analysis as we go forward, where some of these big bills are going to start coming in, and we're reviewing what the history of our revenues are with regard to sales tax and all of those types of things. So they've been very, very helpful in providing some additional information, and we'll continue to monitor it and keep the board involved and advised. That's all I have. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mayor Dardis. Any questions? All right, seeing none, moving down to other business. And the first item is co-executive director in compensation. And Commissioner Grimberg and Commissioner Peterson, I'm not sure which one of you would like to take this.
Madam Chair, I can.
Go ahead.
Board members, this came as a product, we talked about this yesterday at Finance too. This came as a product of an experience I had personally with a board I sat on. Our executive director resigned. I wanted as chair, taking over the director spot for an interim. And again, like I said yesterday, I'm exaggerating that to effect because we had a great team in place. We wound up putting those team members in charge of the organization. But regardless, I saw my two co-executive directors, and one point of clarification, this did not come from them. This was not a dialogue I had with them. This was independent myself, and I brought this to Chair Carlson out of, I guess, logistical simplicity, bring it right to my chair, thought, that's the most prudent plan of attack in order to avoid my co-executive directors and put them in a compromising position. I went to Mayor Carlson, and my suggestion was, due to the fact our executive director resigned some time ago, and we know that our interim directors are going to have to share quite a bit of duties into probably as long as December or maybe even longer. I didn't think it was fair for them to be as other duties assigned in terms of compensation. I think we all, and I talked about this yesterday too, regarding we all have staff members or employees or team members that we've worked with in the past where you have someone that gets pregnant, gets sick, has to take an extended period of time off, and that person that's their immediate peer has to take on some of their workload. And that's the other duties assigned where I'm fine with it if it's a month or maybe two, but we're going to get to up to, like I said, 6 months of some sort of compensation. I think they're due because the extended workload, as I said again yesterday, I'm sure our friends in the mayor and city council within Fargo need their executive director full-time. I need my executive director full-time. So everything Mr. Wilson does, and I won't speak for the mayor, but everything Mr. Wilson does for me, I need him for those 40 hours. Therefore, everything additionally we're asking him to do for the Diversion Authority is additional time he's taking in and above his baseline expectations from the county commission. So I thought it was fair to compensate. Our proposal is to have a substantively less than what our executive director was being paid, but I have a proposal that would pay him retroactively till June. The intent would be an average of Mr. Redlinger's salary and Mr. Wilson's salary, 20% of that, because there's going to be an allocation of time where we talked about debate of having it done by the hour, by 15 minutes, by half an hour. I think due to the fact this is such a dynamic situation where they'll be working for an hour here, 15 minutes there, and as a couple folks had to go through a couple days ago, there was a full day of work, and I call this job myself, I call this my vacation time. I'm still employed. I still have a job. So every time I'm at my commission meeting, every time I'm at subcommittees, things like this is vacation time for me. I'm going to still have to do my job outside this, as is Mr. Wilson, as is presumably Mr. Redlinger. So I thought it only fair to take a portion of what they had to do. Now it's party time. All right. I think it's a portion of what we presume to pay our executive director in the past. Baseline expectation, like I said, was the average of their two salaries. 20%. What that amounts to is on a 2,080 hours a week, 2,080 hours a year, 20% of that, the compensation due every month for Mr. Redlinger and Mr. Wilson would wind up being $3,250. And I proposed making that retroactive back to June. So again, we still had that window of time after our executive director resigned where they were working for the as other duties assigned for free per se. But that would be my proposal. I don't know if Commissioner Grinberg, you want to jump in, but long story short, I think it's time to compensate our co-executive directors, not exorbitantly, but enough to at least acknowledge the work. And again, I expect Mr. Wilson to be doing his baseline job for the county. So I think it's only fair that we compensate them to some degree for that additional time served. So I'm open for questions for Commissioner Grinberg, Vice Chair Grinberg.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item?
Just want to say, I want to thank Robert and Michael for all their hard work they've done. And as we all know on this board, the project is on time and continuing to go, and we have a lot of stuff going on. Looking at the video today. But it's a huge project that we want to keep moving forward, and I know it's taken some time from their family lives, but I very much appreciate that.
Any other comments or discussion? With that, could we get a roll call vote, please, Don?
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Edminger.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Seldsvold.
Aye.
And that is everyone.
Thank you, and that motion carries. And I would just echo what Mayor Mahoney said, and I would anticipate that every single board member up here would concur that the work that you two have been doing has just been absolutely stellar, and you've picked it up just with no hiccups, and it's going very smoothly. So we appreciate all your work on top of that, and like Mayor Mahoney said, we know that this is taking time away from your family. Hopefully we'll be able to find a new executive director and get one hired by the end of October and get that person started by the first of the year, and then you guys might be able to take a little time. All right, moving on to the P3 monthly update, and I will turn this over to Mr. Shockley and Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Diversion Authority Board. This really comes from a kind of a concept that I had thought about for a while based upon some of the questions that we received from the board members about providing an update to the board in kind of a usable format regarding what is going on a daily basis and the project agreement with respect to the construction of the P3 component of the project. It's a very complex document. It's 12,500 pages, give or take a few pages. And there's a lot of different elements to the agreement that are ongoing every day. And it's sort of, I called Martin and we kind of talked about it, and we thought this was a good idea to provide a summary that would be easy to report to the board, give you 3 pages, summary level of the detail. And if there were specific issues that you were really interested in, we could dig deeper into those issues. But we wanted to kind of provide a summary update every month that you could look at, and if there was a specific question you could ask us. And so we presented the format, which you see in your packet, to the planning committee. And the reason that we presented the format is that we wanted to get your input about what information you wanted to see so that we didn't jump immediately to the substance. We wanted to make sure this was the information that we were presenting in the right format. Once we kind of get your buy-in on the format, we'll start populating that, and then next month you would see it as a report out in the board packet. And Martin can kind of jump in from there. He spent a lot of great time on the project. So,
yes, Chair Carlson, members of the board, as John pointed out, this is in outline format. Unfortunately, it won't stay 3 pages. By the time we populate it with the information and the data in the tables and the appendices, it'll probably grow to 15 to 20 pages. But it does represent and would represent a snapshot in time of all of the items that we're tracking on the public-private partnership side. This information is compiled by Paul Barthel and Andrew Dobson and his team at the PMC. So it is information that is a reflection of what has been, in many cases, submitted by the developer. It will not represent, because it does include disputes and compensation events and ongoing issues, it will represent what the status of those items as they exist each month. It won't represent necessarily a unified position from the developer and the authority. So it is a running snapshot of kind of where we are with the P3 project. As John pointed out, this is information that many of the board members have asked about and for, and so this is a format we're making sure that you're comfortable with, and then we'll populate it for next month's board meeting.
Thank you.
And I stand for any questions on.
Any
what was in
questions?
your packet.
Commissioner Sherling.
Thank you. So one of the questions that's come up over time is the percentage of the budget, for example, being allocated to lands and where we're sitting there. Will that be reflected?
In this report, we have not included a lands component because those numbers are reported out by the PMC on a monthly basis for the overall project. I believe if there was information specific to lands, it would be covered by Paul in his normal report or with Jody. If we do want to add a specific P3 component of lands, we could do that. Although I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, all the lands for the channel are now acquired. So that would say 100%.
Well, and I guess this is off topic for the PMC actually, but when you ask about what you'd like to see reported, I know that that's something that we've discussed over time, is just where we're sitting in general, budget-wise, and also I think that would go hand in hand with time-wise. I mean, they've been, from what I can tell, doing an outstanding job of keeping on track with their schedule, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know that we got halfway through the channel right now, if that's good or not. Sounds good, but I don't know if that's what was anticipated.
Yeah, I think I don't want to speak for Mr. Barthel and the PMC, but I'm sure a focus session around that would be productive. And then if there's additional information other than what you're getting, I'm sure it would be put together and have that as a part of the monthly board report as well.
Thank you.
And I could maybe add a little bit. The intent of this wasn't necessarily budget or finance related. It was really focused in on what is going on the P3 agreement. As your largest construction contract, we thought it would be appropriate and good for the board just to have a unique report that just identifies what's going on under the project agreement and try to present that in an objective fashion so that you're staying informed about issues. And if there was something in particular that you wanted to know more about, we could certainly have a deep dive into that or meet one-on-one on it.
So I know Ms. Smith is standing back there. Did you want to add something in response to Commissioner Sherling's question?
I was going to use the word lurking, but Commissioner Sherling, if you'd like on the lands report, we can always add a budget component that would update you then where we are with the lands budget month over month and the acquisition of those lands. I know there was some commentary yesterday at the Finance Committee. We are reviewing some of the coding that has occurred. So if you can give us till October to provide that report, there'll be some significant expenses from land acquisitions coming through in the next 60 days. So it'll be a better reflective of where we'll end up at the end of the year, but we can certainly add that component to the lands update versus the P3. We do meet with the P3 team or with our VA once a month and go over any concerns that there may be with the lands, but really for the most part, there was one small portion of it that was left fallow this year, and the rest of it is under construction. And so coming up in the next year, there's really not a lot of significant output from it other than always kind of managing access issues and or weed complaints from the property owners. So
I think that would be useful information. I wonder if, do you give that to the Cass County Joint Water Resource District? Would they find that useful?
I don't even have to look at Manager Steen, and I know that the answer would be yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to see that there too. Thank you.
Okay. If it's okay, we'll start in October to give us time to continue to do some of that coding. So,
Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you. Martin, maybe a question for you regarding the P3. So the P3 contractor has a lot of subcontractors, right?
Yes.
And do we monitor the payment of that activity? So
From the developer to their subcontractors?
yes.
We do not monitor those. The only payments that we have are, as the authority has, will be the milestone payments to the developer and any other payments as related to change orders or other issues.
And I'm not suggesting this happened, but in the event that a subcontractor weren't to be paid, whose liability does that end up falling on?
That would first go to the DNC contractor, which is the design and construction contractor. That is if you think of it in a normal construction vernacular, is the general contractor to the developer. And then if there were a dispute between the DNC contractor and its sub, then that would go to RRVA. That's on their side of the transaction, so to speak.
Okay, so it would never come back on us then for lack of payment.
In the project agreement, the payment mechanism is very clear. Our obligation is to make the milestone payments and the availability payments if they meet the conditions of the agreement. Payments to subs, those issues are a requirement that the DNC contractor and the developer have to make.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Campbell, just for clarity, on the second page of the outline, you'll see a section called payments. And so our intent is to do two things: track actual payments to the developer as they happen, but also that table would include the scheduled milestone payments that are laid out. And so you would be able to see what payments are anticipated, and then when they are made, those would be filled out in the table. So that's why I'm saying that the document would grow somewhat, because there are a number of milestone payments that would be included.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Mayor Dardis.
To Commissioner Sherling's question, there's $15 million remaining in the 2024 cash budget for this year. And Ms. Smith has talked to us about the overall project budget of $541 million in lands, and she's a great soldier, that she's going to try and stay at that. So we are monitored. That the Finance Committee is also, that line item is being closely monitored.
Thank you.
Any further questions? And Mr. Shockley and Mr. Nicholson, when would you like board members to get you feedback by? What's the deadline for feedback on this draft item?
I think if there was any additional line items you'd want or questions in the format in the next couple of weeks, so that we can begin to populate it for the intent of presenting it at the next regular board meeting in September.
And I'm looking at Peggy because I know that she is the individual who makes sure we have everything ready for the board packet. That would be the Thursday before. Maybe Peggy, could you give us a date?
Have it comments back by September 5th, so Martin and John, then they'll have time to populate.
September 5th? Okay. So, board members, if you could review that and any comments back to John and Martin by September 5th, end of day.
And just one further comment on that note, this is obviously not a static document. So if you go a couple months and you say, there's something else I'd like to see, obviously we can work that into future drafts.
All right, thank you. All right. And I just have one other thing under other business to add. This was handed out at the Finance Committee yesterday. There's two.
Is there two?
Yeah. These are just information in regards to questions that were raised by Commissioner Pepcorn in relation to the amount of funding that the state of Minnesota has contributed to the diversion project. This came from our city engineering department, and to date, the state of Minnesota and the city of Moorhead has contributed approximately $124 million towards the project. Like I stated yesterday, not a science whiz, but I do understand the concept. When there's a river, you need to have both sides of the river controlling the the flow to go north, and so you need to have abatements on both sides. And so we have been doing our portion of this. And according to the Joint Powers Agreement, it states that the state of Minnesota will not exceed $100 million in 2015 dollars. If you extrapolate that to 2024 dollars, it'd be $132 million. So we are slightly below the amount of money that the state of Minnesota or the Minnesota funding needs to contribute. The second sheet is the project overview and the lobbying sheet for bonding requests that Clay County and the city of Moorhead have been doing to request the remaining amount from the state of Minnesota. The city of Moorhead still has 14.71 million left, and Clay County has 37.7. And when I say Clay County, it just means the area outside of the city of Moorhead. So that's a total project cost of 52.42 million. Unfortunately, the state of Minnesota did not pass a bonding bill this year, so we will be updating these numbers and going back again and keep going back until we get the funding that we need. So just wanted to disseminate that information for everybody's awareness, and particularly in response to Commissioner Pepcorn's questions. So moving on to number 12. So number 12 and 13 are two separate motions. The first would be a motion, looking for a motion to go into closed executive session pursuant to North Dakota Century Code Section 44-04-19.1 sub 2 and sub 9 for attorney consultation and direction, for negotiations regarding the dispute related to the epoxy coated rebar, and for a potential amendment to the project agreement for the stormwater diversion channel and associated infrastructure. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll be going into closed executive session for number 12. Number 13 would be a motion to go into closed executive session pursuant to North Dakota Century Code Section 40-04-19.1 subdivisions 5 and 9 to receive general counsel and external counsel's advice regarding the employment claims of Paulson versus the Metro Flood Diversion Authority, and to provide the negotiating directions to the chair and counsel regarding this matter. Do I have a motion to go into executive session on this item?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're in closed session on that as well. All right, the Metro Flood Diversion Authority is back from the two executive sessions. We will take number 12 on the agenda related to the dispute on the epoxy coated rebar. Mrs. Shockley, I don't know if you were going to read a statement, and then I would be looking for a motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As discussed, the action item would be to approve infrastructure agreement regarding the epoxy coated rebar between the Metro Flood Diversion Authority and Red River Valley Alliance. I believe that board members have a copy of the agreement.
Madam Chair, I'd make that motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion related to this item? If not, why don't we take a roll call, please, Don?
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis. Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Ebinger.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Salzapol.
Aye.
That is everyone.
Thank you, and that motion carries. And just a lot of gratitude to all of the staff who worked really hard to get this epoxy coated rebar issue resolved. The next is the closed executive session listed under number 13. We are in open session now, and I will turn this over to Mr. Shockley as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to the previous direction given by the board in executive direction or in executive session regarding negotiating parameters to the chair, a mediation occurred with Mr. Paulson pursuant to his contract. We received additional direction from the board tonight. We discussed the separation and release agreement in executive session. We're now asking for final approval of the separation and release agreement. I believe all the board members have a copy of it. It is a separation and release agreement with Mr. Paulson, whereby he is releasing the authority from other claims and other terms and conditions set forth in the agreement. So we need a motion and a second and a vote to approve it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shockley. I would be looking for a motion at this time.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this matter? None. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Carlson.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis. Mayor Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. Ebinger.
On advice of council, I will recuse myself from this vote.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherling.
Yes.
Mr. Grimberg.
Aye.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Selgeable.
Aye.
That is everyone.
Thank you. And that motion carries as well. And with that, our next meeting is scheduled for September 26, 2024. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you.